Thanks.
Call to order the meeting of Monday, April the 25th, and ask that the clerk please take the roll.
Councilmember Amos.
Present.
Councilmember Archibald.
Here.
Councilmember Ashford.
Present.
Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Lewandowski.
Here.
Councilmember Ruiz.
Here.
Mayor Rep.
Here. You have the minutes before you from the regular meeting of April the 11th, 2016. Is there a motion to receive and file?
So moved.
Councilmember Ashford, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Amos. Is there any additions, deletions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes will stand as they were submitted. Now is the time for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward, please come to the podium. Give us your name, and you have 4 minutes.
Madam Mayor, Council, Scott Farquhar, 1018 Varney Street, Port Huron, Michigan. I'd like to start out by publicly congratulating the Port Huron Prowlers on winning the Colonial Cup. Any of you that are there, and I know some of you were there, it was really great to see the community get behind them and the attendance. The last time I saw personally that arena full like that was in 2004 when one of the Silver Sticks was won by a Port Huron team, and then it was 44 years before that. And I'm hoping that that's the upward swing of the community and getting behind McMorran and the things there on Saturday night. Very good turnout for the concert. I think we're over the hump, and let's make it happen. And I am behind not only the council, McMorran Authority, and everything to make some changes. One thing I wanted to bring up to you as far as the city and something that I believe that we need to look into. The year's 2016, and we all live off of debit cards, credit cards, and the city of Port Huron, you can't pay your bill with a debit card or a credit card. It's something that we need to look into, I believe. Can't pay your water bill, can't pay your taxes. I myself, I got a $20 bill in my wallet, and that's it. You know, it's just something that we need to look into in the future. I know there's a little bit of cost there, but it's a convenience to the residents, and it's something I think we need to look into. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just to let you know, you can use a credit card, but there is a fee charged for using your credit card, because
Okay.
otherwise it's a cost to the city.
I
I'm sure it's been for quite a while. Online, you just can't do it in person, but you can do it online.
Come in, I don't have cash.
Yeah, you can do it online. Yeah. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the council this evening?
Scott Richard Warden, 412 Grand River, Port Huron, City of Port Huron. A couple things. I wanted to recognize Chief Reeves and his police force on that wonderful evening there at the McMorran Arena with our professional hockey team, and what a great community support. I thought it was great to have some of the officers walking the hallways, and it was great to have. They were very friendly. It was nice to have that presence, but also even to interact with the people attending there in the community. And it reminds me of a lot of when I was younger and going to some of these events. I don't know if we had, of course, probably more manpower, but those type of things really bring a great presence and a sense of community, and also that they were approachable, but also for safety in case something does happen. So I want to say that was great, an A+. I haven't seen them there for some of the other events there, probably because it's not as big of a turnout or not, but I thought that was a wonderful thing if we can do. I just did a quick little review just on something on the agenda. I heard it in the news, but also here, the SMG, the Second Amendment to finally breaking ties when it comes to McMorran. Item number 4 in that Second Amendment, basically, and again, just the way I read it, it basically looks like it paves the way so that any employees or anybody that was under contract are going to be free to be able to accept any positions back with the city of Port Huron, because there's some outstanding people that would do over and above for that facility that are a great talent. And I thought that was great to have in there, so that those, we could actually have no barrier to allow them to be back at the heart. They put their heart and soul into it, and they make it. So hopefully that will open up so that we can make sure that they have positions back in that facility and really help make it a go. And the only other thing is, I don't know what's going to happen with the thing. I think I heard maybe that it's now going to be under Parks and Rec or that type of thing with the city. We have probably the best Parks and Rec, Nancy Wismer, and I think if we rally around and get some key people maybe involved in the support, there's an awful lot of things that we can do, maybe even to help fundraise or do some events there if we want to set something up for even some type of a foundation for not only the theater but also for McMorran Authority, where we actually generate some support directly for future capital needs and for the success and future success of what we have remaining there. So I think that if that's something that is temporary, I think we should look and see if we can really make a go of this and let all of her talents and recruit some people in the community that really would put a lot of effort in to help make that a go. Besides that, you guys have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to address the council this evening?
Mayor, City Council, Sharon Bender, South Boulevard, Port Huron. Also encouraging support for City Manager's Resolution 16-0055. Although Wismer is a wonderful name in this community, her name is Windsor, and that's a wonderful name too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the council this evening? Seeing no one, I'll declare public comment closed, and we'll move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Ashford. You can take the vote, please.
Councilmember Amos.
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald.
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford.
Yes.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewandowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Ruiz.
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes, the items on the consent agenda approve the scheduling of public hearings on May 9th for the tentative budget of the Port Huron Downtown Development Authority for 2016-17 fiscal year, and for comments on the proposed capital improvement program, and recognized April 29th, 2016 as Arbor Day in the city of Port Huron. That will take us back to resolution number 1, please.
Is approving the Second Amendment to Management Agreement between McMorran Authority, City of Port Huron, and SMG to revise the end date for the management term to be May 31st, 2016, and other related revisions.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Amos. Mr. Freed, I wonder if you'd like to
Yep,
give
absolutely.
a little overview, please.
Madam Mayor and Council, before you have an amendment that essentially terminates our agreement with SMG a little more than a year early, there was some clauses in the original agreement that would limit us from hiring current SMG employees. Working with SMG, we've mutually decided that it's in the best interest to begin looking at other options for McMorran. They have agreed to release those employees for future hire should the city so choose to do so, or whatever options we choose to explore. But the amendment is pretty clean cut. Our city attorney here is for any questions if you have, but that's pretty much what it does. We would anticipate that this would be effective May 31st, and that an additional option would need to be employed by June 1st. I have spoken with you individually. I believe that I will be bringing a proposal in your May meeting to find some way in which Parks and Recreation would become a component unit of McMorran and operate it. I will look at a proposal to take to the McMorran Authority first, and then back to council for ratification.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Could you, Mira,
Yes,
could you
Councilmember
elaborate on a component? Remember, what does that do? What is-
Essentially operate it like we would like a Palmer Park Recreation Center or any other type of city facility. that type of operational agreement with the authority.
Would you be presenting something to us in the way of a proposal?
Absolutely.
Their visions?
Yep.
You know, because that's a big stretch between a recreation center and running a facility.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mira.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, Mayor
Councilmember Harris.
Just a little comment, as much as I wholeheartedly support and will support this resolution, I think everybody should know in here, this decision is not the holy grail. If you you only have to look back to March 25th with the McMorran facility and stuff, and we have payables of over $125,000 that are over 90 days old. We have utility bills that we have to pay for. I think that there's a lot of things that we're going to have to do, and this is the first step in that right direction. But if anybody thinks that just this simple agreement is going to answer all our problems, it's not going to. But I think that we're heading in the right direction, and I will support the motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewandowski?
Yes.
Councilmember Ruiz?
Yes.
Councilmember Amos?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. We'll move on to Resolution 2.
Is approving the contract with the Michigan Department of Transportation for reconstruction of Reed Avenue from 16th Street to Electric Avenue.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Ruiz. Is there discussion?
Yes, Mira.
Councilmember Ashford.
Yes, City Manager, could you elaborate? This is what, a budget item, correct? Or
Yes,
on the goal?
yes, this is a budget item, it is in our capital improvement plan. Essentially, the cost to the city would be $74,000. The federal aid we receive is $333,600. This is a key piece of infrastructure moving into our industrial park on the south side. So this will be complete reconstruct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mira.
You're welcome. Yes, Councilmember Lewandowski.
When was the last time this road was reconstructed?
I will have our city engineer come up for that.
Good evening. I do believe this road was reconstructed in the late 60s.
It's a while ago.
Seems like, remember, I lived off the corner of Reed there at one time. Seems like there was a small section from, it was either military to electric that was done. I don't remember if they went the other far or not, but,
They did, but we didn't go very far down the roadway. And this roadway also has some water main work on it.
okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Smith before he sits down? Let's get back up. No.
Dave, real quick, is this the type of contract where MDOT bids it for us, correct?
MDOT will bid this project. It will be bid on May 6th.
Excellent. So this is not something we fiduciate in-house?
We designed it in-house, but we are not bidding it in-house.
So when is that supposed to start for construction?
We will probably start this construction after the 4th of July.
Madam Mayor, this is very similar to the Glenwood project, in which when MDOT provides us a large grant, they take care of the procurement process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will take the vote.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewandowski?
Yes.
Councilmember Ruiz?
Yes.
Councilmember Amos?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. We'll move on to Resolution number 3.
Is approving the scheduling of a public hearing for May 9th, 2016, to hear comments on the tentative 2016-2017 budget.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Councilmember Ashford, is there a second? Support. Mayor Pro Tem Archibald. I would like the city manager is going to give us a presentation now for a few minutes on what the budget is involved with.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can everyone hear me okay? We'll start out tonight by just quickly giving a cursory view of the proposed budget you have before you. The general fund revenues are relatively stagnant year over year. Property taxes are slightly down. Income tax, we project a slight increase. We are monitoring the economy, GDP, to see how our economic indicators look, because that does greatly affect our income tax. But for all intents and purposes, it's a very stagnant revenue for the general fund, incredibly stagnant. Moving down to the general fund expenditures, year over year, slightly under $1 million increased. In large part, it is because of the rising fringe cost of our health care premiums, of our unfunded liabilities for pension and health care costs, and also a 2% raise, which we're contractually obligated for all employees. That goes into effect July 1st. So all employees will receive a 2% raise this year coming July 1st. The capital improvements, we're reappropriating the $300,000 for the elevator project that was in this current year because the work won't begin until September because there's a long lead time on the parts. So those expenditures will be incurred in the next fiscal year. We have reinstated $55,000 in capital for McMorran. We also continue to assess every position when retirees take place to see if that position needs to be replaced or if we can contract out. And we will continue to do that in this current budget. In the rubbish and garbage collection, as you all know, in 08 and 09, during the housing market, our property tax values tanked, leading to about a $230,000 structural deficit within the rubbish fund. And our cash reserves, which were at high at $1.5 million in 2008, would be depleted by the end of the year. Without additional revenue, just like last year, bulk leaf and yard waste pickup and recycling would need to be eliminated. In this current budget, we continue the $25 annual fee per residential dwelling to be charged in order to maintain the bulk leaf pickup, but also recycling throughout our community, just as in last year.
Okay, so this is just a continuation.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, no increase. Other highlights, as you all know, we had a HUD loan repaid for $1.1 million. We've set aside $350,000 for housing improvements to fund Pioneer Home Buying Program and other programs with our Community Development Office. But we've also allotted $750,000 to be used for reconstruction of downtown parking lots. A contract was recently awarded for $436,000 for the complete reconstruction of East Quay parking lot. We believe that we will have some additional funds left over that we can look at maybe some additional parking lots in the coming year as well. A contribution from the DDA of $100,000 is in their proposed budget to help with street paving on Glenwood and the Beard Street area, the project that's going on up here on Michigan and Beards area in this coming summer. For the second consecutive year, the proposed budget includes an additional $500,000 down payment on our more than $100 million of unfunded liabilities, thereby improving our funding levels over time. Most other programs have been maintained at current levels. The proposed budget includes projections for 18 and 19 as well. As part of the commitment I made when I became your city manager was to maintain 3-year rolling budget projections, and you have that in this budget. MERS has been conducting an experience study to determine what changes need to be made in our actuarial assumptions in order to adequately fund our pensions and OPEBs that the City of Port Huron has for current employees and retirees. What this study is essentially looking at is, one, mortality tables. People are living long. The current mortality tables we use for our actuarial study is outdated. The other component of the experience study is a more realistic return on investment. Currently, we projected about 8% annual return on our investments. They are lowering that forecast to 7.75%. In addition to those two components of their experience study, they're also requiring that we reduce our fixed amortization periods of gains and losses and unfunded amounts. Since 2005, MERS has been gradually reducing our amortization period to help ensure that the cost of current employees is not shifted onto the future generations. Here's the concern. We have not seen that experience study. We will receive it this summer. And it could have profound impacts on budgets going forward. So we simply, our current actuary, our $100 million of unfunded liabilities, about $47 million of unfunded liabilities in the OPEBs, and about $53 million of unfunded liabilities in the pensions, those are based on outdated information. And we will get current information this coming summer.
So is this a global initiative on behalf of MERS?
Yes.
Because everyone else is dealing with the same issue?
Absolutely.
And, okay, a lot of complaints. And
Absolutely.
So
this will be the same experience study that all municipalities who use MERS will use.
Right, okay, thank you.
I wanted to give you a chart from 2009 of our pension fund and then our pension OPEB so you can see the consistent growth in these two funds. And what's significant is we are still seeing consistent growth, and that's on outdated information that had a little bit unrealistic return on investment projections and outdated mortality tables and an amortization schedule which is a little bit longer. So this could get worse in the future. Moving on to the next slide, I think what exasperates the problem is we have had declining general fund revenue since 2009, and you'll see that. But I also put up there the required annual contributions for our unfunded liabilities. And this is what's important, because when we talk about unfunded liabilities, sometimes it's hard to point to how does this affect our day-to-day lives of our citizens. And this is exactly how it does it. The more we have to pay for our unfunded liabilities is less general fund resources we have to pay for parks and recreation, police protection, fire protection, and general government. And so this graph further demonstrates the real day-to-day pressure our unfunded liabilities are placing on our ability to deliver services to our citizens.
Okay, and just benchmark right there. And under other highlights, you mentioned, the 100 million towards the unfunded liability. So what does that do to kind of counter this?
That's keeping it in, that's stifling the growth of it just a little bit.
Okay, so that's just like a Band-Aid.
Correct.
Okay.
With us tonight, we have Joe Heffron. He is a CPA and a partner for governmental practice and professional standards at Plant Moran. Plant Moran is one of the largest CPA firms in the country, or in the state, excuse me, and they work with almost hundreds of municipalities across the state. And so he's going to come and dissect our annual contributions for us.
Thank you. One of the things that you all remember in the June 30 of 2015 financial statements when you received them in December is that there was a new accounting pronouncement on how all cities within the United States will account for pensions, called GASB 68. And it put the liability for that right on the balance sheet. But one of the other things it did is it required the actuary to present a schedule of how the total pension liability changed from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. That gave us good information we had never had before that we could present to you. And so I took those numbers, and on the left half of the slide that I've got up here, I've cherry-picked the numbers from those changes in total pension liability so that I can measure what is the actual normal cost for pensions. And as you look at this, the service credits, that would be everybody provides service every year, and that added $1.78 million during the year ended June 30, 2015 to the cost of providing pensions. There was also administrative costs through MERS of $188,000, and the employees were contributing $1.15 million. Those three things are $823,000, and in a perfect world where the actuaries, every year that we had ever had an actuarial evaluation, if every estimate had been spot on, and people retired exactly when we thought, and they passed away exactly what the mortality table said, and we earned exactly what the 8, or at the time 8.25% rate of return was. If everything had been exact, and the actuary has to guess at all these things. I'm not being critical of any actuaries, but if that had happened, that would have been our cost, $823,000. That's the cost of providing pensions for the year ended June 30, 2015. But none of the actuaries, not Gabriel Roeder, not Tegrit, none of the actuaries over the last 40 years have been guessing perfectly because they were basing it on what had happened in previous years, and that's the reason they do experience studies. Lots of things are happening differently. People are retiring a little earlier. They are living a lot longer. And the mortality tables that had been used were 1994. They've now updated it to 2014. So MERS is clearly getting better information. But the result of all those experience differences is that we started off the year with the $51 million net pension liability as of the beginning of last year. And when you look at the carrying cost of that, not even trying to eat into that and make that go away, just the carrying cost, the interest on that is $4.1 million. Plus there was another $300,000, and it's a small number, but that's Ed's accounting stuff, all the experience differences that happened during the year, you amortize that to smooth it out. And so the long-run cost, the full accrual cost that was shown in your financial statements was $5.3 million for the year. That's the expense that had you paid that, the liability would not have grown, it would have stayed exactly the same. And that number is going to change a little bit from year to year, but if you keep paying essentially that number with inflationary increases, the $52 million at the beginning of the year would have just stayed right there. It didn't. It grew to $54 million because the contribution, the last line we have here, that the actuaries required you to pay was not $5.3 million, but $3.2 million. And so we knew when we presented this with the audit at the end of last year that there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And so those two bars, the one on the left is what the actual evaluation with all their studies and assumptions said the city of Port Huron needs to pay $3.2 million. But the actual long-run cost to tread water and stay right where we were would have been $5.3 million.
So Joe, just a comment. Essentially, our pension fund took a $2.1 million hit last year.
Yes. And so the net pension liability from the beginning to the end of the year grew from about 52 million to about 54 million. This next slide is a history going back to the year 2000 of what the assets and the pension liability was. Now, the pension liability that's measured by the actuary is going to grow for a couple of reasons. At any point in time, at June 30, or actually it's December 31st, MERS is on a calendar year end, and so you have to shift everything 6 months. But at December 31st, 2014, 2015, when they're measuring the total pension liability, they're only counting the portion of the pensions that have been earned by providing employment services up through that measurement date of December 31, 2014, or the one we'll be getting in the summer will be December 31, 2015. We know that people will continue to work, earn more money, earn more service credits. The number of years that will get multiplied by the multiplier are all going to grow, but the cost of the new service, the new employment that's going to continue, the higher wages, that cost is not being recognized yet. So for that reason, we'd expect that number to grow from year to year. And you'd also expect it to grow with the 8% discount rate that they've been using. So when someone says, and I only point this out because I know a lot of communities have looked at the liability and said, okay, that's my hard number, let's deal with it and get rid of it. It's not a hard number because that's only the measurement through a point in time. It's going to continue to grow because as people provide more service credits, more employment, and interest goes up, it's going to continue to rise. So the blue line is in fact the liability. It's been measured by the actuaries from 2000 all the way up through 2014. And we can see it did, as I would have guessed, it was rising. The asset side of it did not. We were 100% funded back in the year 2000 and 2001, as you can see. But the assets, in fact, stagnated and started to drop a little bit, and that's for a couple of reasons. We know that in 2008 and 9 we had market declines. The value of that that's shown up here is smoothed over 10 years, though. And so that's only coming in slowly over a 10-year period. One or two of the other years since then, we've had some higher than expected returns. Those are also being smoothed. All of the assets are being smoothed, which means returns above or below the 8.25% are being smoothed over 10 years. But also, I think the payouts are higher than MERS would have expected back in the year 2000 because of the mortality tables. People really are living longer, which is a great thing, but it means they're going to continue to take the pensions longer than what was originally assumed. And it's those reasons that have caused the orange line to be declining so that we're now about 61% funded instead of 100% funded.
So Joe, if I could, Madam Mayor and Council, you see here that our liabilities are growing consistently. Our assets are shrinking, $2.1 million in the pension fund alone last year. But this is based, again, on an old experience study by MERS with old mortality tables, old interest rate return numbers, and a longer horizon to amortization schedule. And so this summer, we're going to get the new numbers, which all expectations are will make these projections worse. So this is the good numbers. This number should get worse by the end of summer when we get the new experience study applied to our actuaries.
So it doesn't mean anything, so it means we still got a job to do in trying to equalize this out. So my question is that when 2000, if we saw this trend, this is what this is, this trend, so it's like you say your guess, it's no guess because that's where it was going as far as your liabilities. So seeing this, was there anything we could have done better to?
I think let's get to the end. We'll talk about that in
Okay, I don't want to jump
Yeah.
ahead. Okay, you're going to get that? Oh, okay, because I'm just trying to make sense of things. Okay.
Right. And then the third slide I have, and it's the last one. In the 2014 actuarial valuation, MERS is trying to get ahead of this issue a little bit. And this is not specific to the city of Port Huron.
Right, yeah.
That doesn't make you feel much better, but this is what's happened nationally, quite honestly. So MERS is trying to get ahead, and so they were putting some projections, which they've not done prior to 2014, of what they see coming up in the future. And so you can see the actuarial required contribution. Now, the liability grew relatively quickly, but the way actuarially required contributions work is they amortize that difference, and that's the amortization period that had been 30 years down to 25, and now they're going to bring it down ultimately to a closed amortization period where everything will start with, I think 15 years is what they're going to ultimately get to, and each year's layer will go from 15 down to 0. And so it will be a much quicker payout ultimately, but the goal of an actuary in setting the contribution rates is to get us to 100% funded, but not to have rates jumping up and down. So they will smooth it in. I saw for one of my other cities where they did have a meeting a month ago because they were so anxious about what is it really going to do. Because when we were just eyeballing those 3 changes, we were thinking 30%, 40% increase, and fearful that this would be a problem much sooner to the general fund. The higher contribution rates will impact the general fund by the need to make that contribution, but they have tried to, for the one community that I saw them make a public presentation, and so I have to assume for all communities, while it was large increases, it was not a one-time jump of 30 or 40% that then rose by inflation. It was smoothed in. So this will represent a significant impact to the general fund. That's the bad news. The good news is it won't be immediately the year beginning July 1, 2017, because that's when this hits. July 1 of 17 would be the, quote, new contribution rates under those 3 changes. It won't be a one-time increase of 40% forever. It will be smoothed in a little bit. That's some good news. What I think this tells us, fitting it into your budgeting, is that you've done a great job of managing that fund balance, keeping it at 20 or 21% through the stagnation, really, of your revenue increases. This represents not blowing a hole in it, but it represents, boy, for the next 10, 15, 20 years, it's going to rise. It's going to take a few years to do that, but it will be a significant increase when we get out 10 years from now, certainly. And so it's a matter of understanding that now and dealing with what will that mean to how we provide benefits and still do everything else we've been doing with our city services.
To be very candid, our current, we no longer have the ability to pay our current commitments and maintain our current level of services to the citizens. And that problem is going to get worse moving forward because we are currently not decreasing our unfunded liabilities. It is still growing, even with our $500,000 of additional payment. And so that is the concern moving forward because of the growing annual contributions, about 60 to 63% of those costs are incurred in the general fund. So our fringe costs are stratified out between all the different operating expenses, the streets, the utilities, and the general fund. And about 63% of those costs are bared in the general fund. We dealt with this issue last year, but that didn't solve the problem. That bought us a year or so. So we're buying months and years. And so there will be larger changes. Moving forward, the magnitude of the changes that we expect from MERS, we simply don't know. And so it necessitated that we prepare a budget without major structural changes until we know exactly what we're dealing with. Once we receive our MERS actuarial study, we will spend 3 to 6 months working with our finance team, working with Plant Moran to develop options to bring to the mayor and council to slow or reduce the growing cost of legacy cost. And our goal will be to determine steps needed to present a budget in 17 and 18 which reduces or eliminates the reliance on operating transfers. Because the budget you have before you relies on $635,000 of land purchase fund transfer to balance, as well as $333,000 for capital improvements. And so we had to use some land purchase fund to maintain this budget until we get essentially define the beast we're dealing with when we get our new experience study. And so that's a quick overview of what we're dealing with, the budget you have before you. I'm available, and Joe is available as well if you have any questions. And we can talk about this at the budget work session coming up as well.
Okay, so we can't really have really a legitimate discussion until you do come back with a strategy and some options as to how we're going to move forth and counter some of this in order to get it stable, to see what we can do.
I think we owe it to our employees and their families to make sure we make decisions that are long-term fixes.
Yeah, precisely,
And you're correct, until we define the problem,
Right.
get the study in, know the numbers firm, we shouldn't make, short-term decisions based on short-term results. We really need to be taking a longer look and a longer horizon on the impacts of the decisions we're making. And so you are correct, waiting until we have that study is what we're hoping for.
Absolutely. Thank you. A nice presentation. Thank you, too.
right,
Thank
is
you.
there- Is there anyone else who would like to?
Yeah, I got a
Councilmember
question
Harris?
for, I guess, Mr. Heffernan. He made a really, a kind of convincing comment that, retiring early has created part of this catastrophe that's coming up. Does that necessarily mean that we'll have to raise the bar on our retirees to make it a little higher?
I've had those discussions with a few communities, and that's hard to do, particularly public safety, because you've got operational concerns. I'm 59 years old. I don't know that you want me out there fighting a fire for you anymore. 10 years ago, maybe. But I'm sure, and it's different with office workers. It's a different consideration.
Right,
But with a lot of the things that your employees are doing, you really have to think through we've got to be safe for them, and, so that's harder to do. It absolutely is. There's about 6 different strategies that MERS is going to try to present to everybody with these new actuarial valuations. That's one of them, but they also understand, particularly with public safety, you can't say everyone works to 65. That doesn't work.
Yeah,
They're looking at the measurement of pensionable wages. Should we be looking at currently, most communities, all salaries and wages? Well, what if we didn't include the sick and vacation payouts? What if we didn't include overtime? That can help tremendously smooth things out. Looking at cost of living, which is very important, and that's another one where cost of living is a significant driver of the future costs. It's also very important to the employees. If you gave me a choice of having cost of living, no cost of living versus I can have it but start at a lower base, I'd say start me at a lower base. Because, so there's, like as I said, 6 different elements that they're really talking to communities about. Why don't you consider some of these things? And it's a complex ball of all these things, all these levers you can pull in terms of what defines the benefit has a significant impact on the cost, and you want to have the right balance of being able to have a benefit you can afford, but also doing right by the employees. I understand that.
Councilman Harris, if I could add to that, there's no silver bullet. There's no one thing we're going to do to fix this. This is going to be moving many levers to looking at the long-term impacts. But one of the reasons why I highlight this, and I've highlighted this since the day I've got here, is I believe that we have a moral and ethical obligation to our employees and to our retirees and to the future citizens of this community to begin talking about this problem. And the city of Port Huron has been on the forefront of defining this problem, of talking about this issue, where now other communities are now taking our lead across the state and calling up Joe and asking for numbers on these. And so I applaud us in all of you for the efforts we've made in the last 24 months to begin really having a serious conversation about this. Because to be completely candid, this is the greatest threat facing our community. It will challenge our ability to provide services to our citizens, and it will challenge our ability to provide our commitments to our current employees and to our retirees.
Any other questions from anyone on council? I'm sure, thank you for the presentation, and
Glad to help.
I'm sure we'll be hearing, anxiously awaiting for what the solutions are, 6-8 months from now after you get the study and have time to look at it. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Freed. And we do have a budget, well, of course, this is for the public hearing, May 9th, and then the council also has a workshop on May the 10th as well. Is there any other questions or comments about this? Yes, Councilmember Lewandowski.
I appreciate getting all that information too, but I think one thing we need to take into consideration is you don't know what the state's going to do 10 years from now either, because there's many communities in this state that are facing the same problem too. So they could cut your funds more, or they could increase, funding to local communities. So I think, going out too far, I said, I don't know if I want to be budgeting for 10 years out, but, 5 or 6 years out, I don't have an issue with that. But I get a little nervous when you say, we got to do this now for 10 years when you don't know what the state's, unless you start to know that the state's going to start cutting your funding again, which is a very real possibility. But, I say you just don't know what, the state's going to do either, so.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Lewandowski brings up an excellent point. In 2008, we had more than about $1.1 million of additional state shared revenue, which we don't have today, which we could use to alleviate the stress. So you are correct. The state has really jabbed it to us on this one.
Yeah, I was actually just
Councilmember
thinking the
Ash.
same thing that Jim just said. The way they play games with the revenue sharing leaves a lot to be desired. So whichever course we take, it'd be best to, have the facts before us and the strategy that the city manager has laid out, make sure we're doing the right thing.
Well, I'm sure this will be an ongoing discussion over the next months. Anything from anyone else? We will take a vote.
Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Councilmember Lewandowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Ruiz.
Yes.
Councilmember Amos.
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald.
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford.
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes, that concludes our regular agenda for this evening. I too would like to say, it was mentioned during public comment, but congratulations to the Prowlers. I wasn't in town this weekend, so I wasn't able to go, but that was really a nice victory and championship that they got. So if there's anyone that could, perhaps we should give some certificate of appreciation at our next council meeting, if you could get a hold of someone at the Prowlers organization, see if they'd be interested in coming to a council meeting and getting recognition.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Excellent. I was going to do the same, so ditto.
Just a question is, somebody asked, are they picking up yard waste now?
I've started, yes.
Yeah.
Anything else from council?
Mayor Rep, I just want to remind the residents of the election on May 3rd. We have 3 essential important items. The city has the Blue Water Transit millage that we would like to renew, and that deserves a yes vote. And then Port Huron Area Schools has 2 very important proposals on there that in my personal opinion, deserve a yes vote as well. So we want to make sure we get out and vote on that.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything?
I would just like, nothing, in the future, that, it is our position, we don't take any positions from, even however we vote on something, because it's a reflection on your position as a councilman. We're nonpartisan.
Well, I believe you did take a position on the Blue Water Area Transit as you sit on that
Well, I didn't
at the
say-
last
when they-
presentation.
I gave them the fact saying it's just a renewal, and then I fell short of saying I can't say whether you vote yes or no. So it's just a friendly thing, that's all.
Well, I just said in my opinion, they both deserve a yes vote. We can say they deserve a no vote in editorial, so.
Yeah.
Anything else from anyone else on council? Yes, Councilmember.
Ask it again, and I'm gonna, one of these days, I'm gonna remember for Dave what the address is on that house, for the stuff that was buried in the
That's
ground.
right.
I'm gonna keep asking.
That's right.
that house
You were,
you
I
did
think you
that-
said that you were having a
Yeah,
meeting the
the
last
last
time.
one too, yeah.
Oh, I
Didn't you
missed
say
that.
the last meeting you had a meeting with them or something? Yeah, okay, then, if you don't mind coming to the podium and filling us in, what happened?
Yeah.
Just to remind everyone, this was an issue that was brought up by Mr. Sebra. It's actually his mother-in-law that is the owner of the property. The property was originally owned by Doug J. War, who tore down a house that was on the property that had a fire. He in turn sold the property to Jim Raditz, who in turn sold it to, it was Sue Jones, who was the mother-in-law. During that time, Mr. Sibra had witnessed that some of the debris was buried on the site, and I've been out to that location. He did show me that in a hole, probably about 2.5, 3 feet down, that there were some large concrete chunks that were still remaining. I called and spoke to Doug Jawar to ask him what had occurred on the property, and he did admit that there is part of the foundation left in place, and it was along the north side of that property. He felt that it was about 3 feet away from the adjacent property's foundation walls, and he felt that that would, could possibly cause harm to it. So he left it in place and just pulled it actually forward, but buried it in place. So he admitted that, yes, he indeed did leave some of that foundation there and, saw some of the remnants of that. I started looking at, what we have in our ordinance regarding that and what other communities have. Typically, when it comes to foundations, other communities do allow foundations to remain in place if they're 2 feet below the surface in broken pieces, which this was. I also asked Todd Schaude to review our ordinances to see if there was anything that was in violation. And talking to Todd also, he believes that this, if there is a major issue, because Lou did know that it was a pre-existing condition, it becomes more of a civil matter rather than one of our ordinances. So at this point, I'm still looking at other communities. I believe that it would be in our best interest going forward that we do have a demolition policy as to how all debris is handled and whether or not we should have notifications if you're going to leave your foundations in place. I've seen the community of Pontiac and also Grand Rapids, they have a demolition procedure. We currently do not have one, other than going through the permit process, but that's something that I think we should look at.
Did you find buried, I think, he said toilets and doors and what else?
I didn't see any toilets or doors.
I know when he came and spoke to council, he had said that he had seen all this stuff buried, so you didn't encounter any of that?
No, I didn't encounter and see any of those type of materials, but I did see the large concrete.
Did he offer to show you any type of refrigerators or whatever it was that he said that was buried down there?
No, he had a pretty good excavation on it, and he said it was roughly about 8 feet in diameter was the size of the hole, and he probably had dug out about 4 and had gone down. But, there was debris there, and it was true, and Doug Jaywar admitted that, but, his rationale was that he didn't want to cause harm to the adjacent property.
I don't have an issue with them leaving a foundation as long as they're a couple feet underneath the ground. Just when somebody says that they see people burying refrigerators, and that concerns me, especially after everything that happened in Flint there. But I said, I don't know how you would check it anyway. Do you have any way of checking to make sure people don't do that? 'Cause, it would be an easy thing to do when you're tearing a house down if they have a basement. You need to fill it back in some garbage, I guess. But
And that's why I think we have to look at procedures and more oversight.
Thank you. Is there anything else from anyone?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I just to the public and for the employees who are watching tonight, I will take the proposed budget and upload it to the city website, as well as a copy of my presentation from tonight as well for public inspection, for those of you who like to go through it, and I'm available at phone number 984-9740 for any citizens who are watching who would like to ask questions. Feel free to call me at my office. You can email questions to me at james@porthuron.org. And I'll be glad to explain any of the complicated issues and talk to you about how it all works for anyone who's out there tonight, and that's it.
There's nothing else. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Meeting adjourned.